The year 2020 is just about over, but for these particular teams, they may wish it would have ended a lot sooner. The Bottom Line Podcast. I'm Jimmy Finizzi alongside Neil Villapiano. We hope you're doing well. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to us. We really do appreciate it. Before we get started, as always, questions, opinions, Twitter and Instagram at Bottomline WMCX, Twitter at The NVP Show. That's at THENVPSHOW, hashtag Bottom Line. Leave a voice message on Anchor, either the app or at Anchor.fm. And if you like what you see on YouTube, please leave a like and a comment down below. Helps out tremendously. And please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss a single episode. Please make sure you subscribe on all audio listening platforms as well. Just include Jimmy when searching for the Bottom Line Podcast. Neil, first of all, this is it. The second to last episode for the year 2020. I cannot believe we have already made it. Well, actually, I should say, thank God we made it because this year has been miserable. But other than that, though, how's everything with you?
Everything is going well so far. I've been up since about 7 o'clock, kind of starting a new kind of, I guess, routine, you would say, that I'm trying to get into. I already got in my 10,000 steps for the day, which is great. I have a lot of really good energy this morning. Got a couple other things I got to do today, but this week has really been a week of reflection for me when it comes to things that I'm doing with
me too.
The Mofobo Network podcast, as well as the Devil's State of Mind podcast, and just figuring out.
By the way, go subscribe to both of those already if you're not already. Just a little shameless plug right there.
Please, no, that would be great.
Go ahead, Neil. I'm sorry.
Right, I need more listeners on Mofobo, and things are progressing well with the Devil's State of Mind. We're obviously, now that the season is actually going to happen, and just a few days from now, training camp is starting. We'll have a lot more to discuss moving forward. We'll have more guests on, without a doubt.
Right.
So, but this week has been about reflection, trying to figure out what I can do better, what I can improve upon, and move from there. But I'm in really good spirits. It's a pretty good day outside. I mean, it's mostly cloudy, but the sun is peeking through the clouds, which is always a good thing. A little chilly, especially taking a walk this morning. It was below 30. But, I got through it. I persevered.
There you go. That's important.
But, yeah, I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I completely feel you on the self-week reflection. I'm doing the same thing. I'm actually in the process of trying to rebrand this podcast. And if you didn't already pay attention to the bios on Twitter and Instagram, this will now be a sports and entertainment podcast, since we do trek away from sports every once in a blue moon, not too much, but we do trek away from sports once in a while. This will still always be a sports podcast. Don't get me wrong. This is always what we're going to be talking about. But I figured, why not do sports and entertainment? This way, everybody can get what they want and nobody has to have any arguments with each other, which hopefully will not be the case in 2021. But I digress there. But I'm in the process of rebranding everything myself, including who I am as a person. I'm trying to get better each and every day, like I know you are, Neil. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty optimistic for the upcoming year. But before we even get to the new year, we have to finish up 2020, and we're finishing up strong, because this is going to be a yearly thing that we're going to be doing here from now until we don't feel like doing it anymore, but I digress.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So last year we did top 5 worst athletes, best athletes, worst teams, and best teams. But this year we figured let's just do worst and best teams, just because, well, we realized it's not just an individual effort in sports, it's a team effort. So we figured let's just stick with teams. And for today's episode, we are focusing on the top 5 worst teams of 2020. Now, as I said in the pre-intro, these teams may have been wishing that this year ended a lot sooner, because this year has been nothing but horrendous in general, but especially for these teams, they would have wished they would have started over. But anyway, with that being said, Neil and I collaborated on both of these lists, by the way, we collaborated on, because it would have been too tough to do separate lists for each of us. Now, again, keep in mind, these are our opinions, not facts, so please do not get into a hissy fit if you agree or disagree with anything that we say, or if you have your own list, please let us know on Twitter and Instagram. You know the deal by now. But anyway, Neil, without wasting any more time, let's get started with the top 5 worst teams of 2020. Starting off with number 5 on our list, the Golden State Warriors. Now, I did feel kind of bad for putting this team on the list, because let's face it, you well,
nobody does. After the last 5 years of them being, the best team and, stacked as they were, I don't think anybody has any sympathy whatsoever for the fact that they had a bad season.
I mean, the reason I'm saying that's my dog in the background, by the way. I'm sorry, she's scampering out. But anyway, I think she wants you to be over.
Jimmy has wood floors, so you can always tell when Maya's in the room, because she's scampering on the ground.
I think she's scampering out of 2022, but I digress.
I think you need an Instagram account for her, because I think a lot of people would be interested to learn about Maya.
You know what? That wouldn't be a bad idea, but that's another topic for another day. But back to the Warriors at 5 on our list of the top 5 worst teams of 2020. We have the Warriors at 5 because, look, you went through pretty much the whole entire year without Steph Curry, without Klay Thompson, and a lot of key guys. So injuries really did them in for the whole year. I get that. So that's why I'm kind of saying it is unfair. But let's face it. You were at the bottom of the barrel of the NBA. You were one of the worst teams ever. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they get only 15 wins?
They finished the year 15. They finished last season 15-50.
Yeah. So when you finish a season like that, especially without your top 2 guys, you kind of deserve to have a spot on this list. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, well, look, we didn't expect them to be this bad. I mean, we expected them to be not as good as they once were, winning all those championships. Well, like 2 or 3 in 5 years they've won NBA championships. But look, we didn't expect them to be this bad. Right. Not as good as they were, but when you're this bad, I'm sorry, you definitely deserve a spot at number 5 on the top 5 worst teams of 2020. So the Golden State Warriors are number 5.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense when we were talking about this list yesterday, when we were putting it together. Again, nobody expected the Warriors going into last season to be, terrible. I think everybody expected them to still be a competitive team. But we didn't really understand the significance of Klay Thompson's injury back in the NBA Finals, and how long he was going to be out. And once it was pretty obvious that he was going to be out pretty much the entire season, you knew that the Warriors were not going to be great, but they still were going to be a competitive team. I fully expected them to be either a team that made it, at the back end of the postseason, the 7th, 8th seed, or just out. But once, Steph Curry also got hurt and was deemed out for the rest of the season, you knew that it was going to be a very, very difficult year. You have D'Angelo Russell, who came over from the Nets on a sign and trade, for the Nets to get KD. They eventually traded and acquired Andrew Wiggins from the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for D'Angelo Russell. But, it never seemed like the team, got it together. Steve Kerr definitely had his work cut out for him. And I don't mean to be critical, but I am going to be critical that I think this kind of proved after last season, I think it kind of proved a little bit that maybe Steve Kerr is not as good of a coach as a lot of people would think, because without the talent that he's had, the likes of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, Harrison Barnes, all these different players, now, he had, I wouldn't want to say scrubs, but he certainly had less talent than what he had in the past.
Right.
So with that being said, I have never been a big believer that Steve Kerr was as good as he is. This year, at least he's got one of the Splash Brothers back in Steph Curry. Draymond Green will eventually, come in. Unfortunately, Klay Thompson once again, got a season-ending injury well before the season
I
started.
feel absolutely terrible for that man.
It's gut-wrenching. It's absolutely gut-wrenching that he experienced an injury like that. And again,
the poor guy can't catch a break.
Well, that kind of makes you wonder a little bit as to say, is he a little bit fragile? He has dealt with injuries in the past. This isn't the first go-around.
Right.
And I don't think it has anything to do with age necessarily. I think it just has to do with unfortunate circumstances. But, Golden State started this year off 0-2. They've won their last 2 games. Kelly Oubre Jr. finally made a 3-pointer. So thank God that happened. We saw, they ended up not getting the first overall pick. I believe they ended up getting the 2nd or 3rd overall pick. I don't remember. I didn't watch the NBA draft because usually with being a Nets fan, the last 5-6 years, there hasn't been a reason to watch the NBA draft. And
that's true.
Non sequitur, this was the one year where I thought I'd actually see the Nets make a pick in the draft, and they traded it away. So, I mean, it was just like, you know what? Like, I'm so used to this at this point, I don't even know. But anyway, they drafted James Wiseman out of Memphis, and so far he looks pretty good. He's he's a center. He's young. He's a little bit more of a traditional center. So, we'll see how he develops in the NBA. But going back to Golden State of 2019, 2020, and again, we say 2020 because, there was a season prior to this one. So, this is why I'm critiquing them. Not for how they've done so far this year. I mean, if they were 0-4, then I would include that. But we really included the 2019-2020 season because that was one of the worst seasons in Warriors history. I don't recall the last time they were that bad.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously there were some things that, were unfortunate. Klay Thompson getting hurt. Same thing with Steph Curry. But bottom line, though, is that when you have 15 wins and you lose 50, especially after being in the NBA Finals the last 5-6 years, it's kind of it's a drop-off that was too obvious not to put on this list considering how poor they were this last year.
Yeah, I think drop-off would be a huge understatement for that. So Golden State Warriors are number 5 on our list for the top 5 worst teams of 2020. Number 4, Neil, I know this might hurt you a bit, but we did talk about it. And in conclusion, this team had to go on the list for obvious reasons. Yep. The Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, let's face it. To go 19 and 41 in a 60-game season. Okay, keep that in mind. It was shortened because of COVID-19. It was a 60-game season. To go 19 and 41, dead last in the National League Central. Now, I'm going to read a few players off the roster here, and you tell me
if you're going to tell me the guys that are no longer on this team. Are you
exactly? Look. We just found out they lost Josh Bell. I forget exactly.
They didn't lose. They traded him. What do you mean they lost them?
Traded him. Sorry,
traded him for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They basically traded.
And now they want to trade Musgrove. All right, I'm going to go into a full-fledged rant when you're done because I'm. All
right. Well, hey, conserve your energy. So they traded away Josh Bell for basically a bag of chips and a remote control. So there is that. You mentioned
they wanted to trade. More like it.
Well, yeah, that's true. They want to trade Joe Musgrove, who I think is a pretty solid pitcher. They have Brian Reynolds, Adam Frazier, who I actually like. I like Adam Frazier.
Both going to be traded.
Right. Colin Moran, Jamison Talion, Kevin Newman, Jacob Stallings.
By the way, it's Jamison Tyon, by the way.
Jamison Tyon, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know that's a difficult name to pronounce, but it's Tyon.
No, it's okay.
Tyon.
But bottom line, do those sound like any players that knock your socks off? Hell no. I'm sorry. I get it. They're a young team. I get that. And they're going to get better as time goes on. I get it. But even still, 19 and 41, dead last in the NL Central during a 60-game season with basically a bunch of no-names outside of Josh Bell and Adam Frazier. Come on. I mean, really, you couldn't even get more help. Come on. Pittsburgh Pirates, number 4 on our list, and well-deservedly so. Neil, go ahead.
Oh, God. Well, first of all, when you're the only team in baseball to not even get to 20 freaking wins, you deserve to be on the list in a 60-game season.
That's true. It's true.
I think I could speak for almost every Pirates fan, including our good friend Urinating Tree. I know he's a big Pirates fan himself.
By the way, follow him if you're not already. Tremendous follow.
He all he knows is pain watching this team. You go back to about 5, 6 years ago, the Pirates were one of the better teams in baseball.
Right.
But they had no luck whatsoever playing in the NL Central. And I'll explain why. Every year that they were good, everyone else in the NL Central was good, so they could never get into first place. So for 3 years straight, they played in a freaking dumb Bud Selig wet dream known as the one-game wild card playoff game, which is a joke and should never be allowed again in baseball.
I agree.
It ruins it. It's like, yeah, you made the playoffs, but you're out in one game. So basically, no, you didn't make the playoffs. Like, it's this dumb thing that I wish would just die. I really, really wish it would just die. But anyway, they can't get past the wild card round. The closest they got to even an NLCS was losing in the divisional round to the Cardinals in 2013.
Right.
And every other year, they lost in the one-game wild card round to the Giants. They lost one to, I believe, the Cardinals as well. And they lost one to the Cubs. So I just want everyone to understand that it wasn't that long ago that the Pirates were really good. But I will tell you why the Pirates are the way that they are and why they've been this way for so long. Ownership doesn't give a flying you-know-what about winning. They never have. They care about the bottom line, making that money. Do you know why the Pirates like to make a lot of deals with a team like the Yankees? Because they know that the Yankees, a lot of the time, not recently, but most of the time, especially when George Steinbrenner was still, in charge of the team, they would go well over the luxury tax. So all of that money from the luxury tax would go to a team like the Pirates. So this was this whole collusion together to constantly help the Pirates, a small market franchise, albeit a very historic and very well-respected franchise, especially when you look at between the 1920s and like the 1940s or 50s. The Pirates were always a very, very good team.
And also go back to when Roberto Clemente was playing.
And you think about the players that they've had in their history, guys, like you mentioned, Roberto Clemente, Pops, Willie Stargell. They had a young Barry Bonds who by the time they traded him away was already a Hall of Famer before steroids.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
They've had really good players also. Guys like Jason Bay. Now, this is Jason Bay before he went to the Mets or Red Sox. And he was very good. Freddie Sanchez. Oh, they also had arguably one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball, and that was Garrett Cole.
Yep.
Who they traded to the Astros for Joe Musgrove, who now they're trying to get rid of. So understand that Bob Nutting, the owner of the Pirates, has not given a flying you-know-what about the fans or winning ever. It hasn't happened. So the fact that they're in this situation once again where they're trading everything away and they suck is not a surprise to anybody. Any Pirate fan knows. The only bright spot at this point, now that you traded away Josh Bell for nothing, is you have Ke'Bryan Hayes, former Yankee Charlie Hayes' son, who is one of the top 5 prospects in baseball. But in the next 3 or 4 years, you're probably going to trade him too. So the reality is that for Pirates fans, until you get ownership that actually wants to try to win something, this is the cycle you're going to get every year. Being at the bottom of the National League, being at the bottom of baseball, and trading away any player that's worth a damn. So the Pirates deserve to be on this list for not just this season, but for many years in the past and probably many years in the future of being a living joke in baseball.
And it's also a shame that they play in arguably one of the most beautiful ballparks in all of baseball, and no fans are there because their team is so irrelevant. Because their owner does not care about the fans, and they don't care about winning. So that's the bottom line with the Pirates.
You look at the fact that you have several other professional sports teams in that city. You have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have won 3 Stanley Cups within the last decade. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who won 2 Super Bowls in the previous decade and went to another one in 2010. The Pirates haven't even been to the NLCS since the late 90s when they kept getting screwed over by playing the freaking Atlanta Braves. So this is the frustrating thing about watching the Pirates, is that they have these young players. These guys show promise. They have the ability to do it. But the minute that they get to the point where their contract is running up and they're going to actually end up getting more money, the Pirates trade them away. And it's not like they get like a team's top prospect or even top 5 prospect. They get like middle of the pack mid-tier prospects because ownership knows that they won't have to ever pay them a huge amount unless they somehow get really, really good. So could Brian Hayes, who showed a lot of promise and a lot of excitement last season, especially the last 15, 20 games of the year, in the next 2 or 3 years when his contract is up, the Pirates are going to probably end up trading him away for nothing. And this is just what a small market team like the Pirates does. I hate saying that Pittsburgh is a small market, but in many ways it is, especially in baseball. And like you said, Jimmy, PNC, PNC Park, which I've been to several times, is one of the most gorgeous, if not the most gorgeous ballpark in all of baseball other than maybe Camden Yards.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that you have a team that is so putrid and barely anybody shows up just goes to show you how much ownership does not care about the fans. I've said it before when we've had many conversations about things, especially when it involves ownership. The interest of the owners has never been the same interest as the interest of the fans. Never been, and
100%.
never will be. There's only a few owners in history of sports that thought like a fan. Mark Cuban is a good example because guess what? Mark Cuban was a fan. So that's the sad thing about the Pirates. And if it wasn't for some of these other teams who had really bad years in 2020, the Pirates would have been almost at number one. Because again, it's not just about 2020. It's about 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, several years prior to that little run between 2012 and 2014. And probably many years down the road, like next year, the Pirates are probably going to win all of maybe 50 games. Who knows? Because they'll eventually trade these guys at the deadline for nothing, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up perfectly in that rant. So I can't argue with that, man. So that is why the Pittsburgh Pirates are number 4 on our list right now, and probably for many more years to come until ownership actually gives a damn. So that's that. Top 5 worst teams of 2020. Quick recap here. Number 5, Golden State Warriors. Number 4, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Number 3, the Detroit Red Wings. Now, why are they at number 3, you may ask? Well, for one thing, they went 17-49. One of the worst records in the NHL by far. Now, not only that, they had probably the highest odds of getting the number 1 overall pick because of it. But because some people in the NHL thought it was a brilliant idea to have somebody lose in the qualifying round of the playoffs get the number 1 overall pick, the Detroit Red Wings got screwed over, and they got the 4th overall pick. And who got the number 1 overall pick? That would happen to be the New York Rangers, and they got Alexis Lafreniere, and not the Detroit Red Wings. All right? So those two things right there, I don't want to say alone, because there are many other factors why the Red Wings are number 3 on this list. What's that?
No, it's a joke.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a joke. Now, I get it. They did acquire a couple of key names in the offseason. They got Mark Stahl, the Rangers, the whole deal. I can go on and on about that. Look, Mark Stahl's not what he used to be. I get it, but he could be solid. I'm not saying he's going to be great. He's going to be solid.
Jimmy's trying to say it nicely. Jimmy's trying to say nicely that Mark Stahl is well over the hill and should retire. That's really what you're saying.
That's lightly putting it. Yes, but he's going to be solid, not great, not good. He's going to be solid for Detroit. So Red Wings, good luck with him and take good care of him while you can. But listen, bottom line is, when you are one of the worst teams in hockey and you don't even get the number 1 overall pick because you got screwed over by a bubble system that was an absolute joke this year. Yeah. I'm not saying the bubble itself was a joke, because it wasn't a joke, but the system in which the playoffs were run this year and the fact that the Red Wings got screwed over with not getting the number 1 overall pick and dropped to 4, they're number 3 on this list.
The NHL draft lottery has always been a joke. It's the same thing in the NBA. I understand the point of it because you don't want teams to tank, but let's be real. A lot of these teams need good players. You want to make your league as competitive as possible. You're not going to do that if you give an original 6 team like the New York Rangers, who actually had a chance to play in the bubble for a little bit, getting the first overall pick. And the fact that they made a rule when the NHL announced that there was the possibility, even a percentage-wise, that a bubble team could get the number 1 overall pick, everybody in the world knew that was going to end up being the case. We all knew that a bubble team was going to get a top 3 pick at least. Probably a lot of us also thought the number 1 overall pick.
Right.
So, you know what? It is what it is. It's this constant, people want to say it's conspiracy theories or whatever you want to say, but after a while, when you clearly see that things are going on and you start getting suspicious, you start to really realize, you know what? Something's a little messed up here. Something's a little fishy. And that's what you see. And the Detroit Red Wings, you look at their situation and you say they are, an original 6 team. They, their playoff streak ended a couple of years ago. I think it was like 25, 26 years in a row where they made the playoffs.
Yep.
They're no longer the Detroit Red Wings that we've known for many years. They don't have a lot of great players. They do have Dylan Larkin, Justin Abdelkader, but he's on the wrong side of 30.
They just lost Anthony to the Kings on a 1-year deal, though.
Well, I mean, they were never going to bring him back. That was just the reality, in my opinion. They let go of Jimmy Howard, which was kind of like about time kind of situation.
Yeah. I mean, no disrespect to Jimmy Howard, but it was time to move on from him. I'm sorry. He's not what he used to be.
Red Wings fans were hoping that through all of this that they would still be able to get the number 1 overall pick, get a guy like Alexis Lafreniere to kind of help start the rebuild. I mean, if you have Dylan Larkin and Alexis Lafreniere both playing together, that's a really good, stepping stones to building a championship team again, to rebuild the Red Wings. And I think Steve Yzerman would have been glad to have that. And unfortunately, they fell down to the worst position they could have fallen down to, and that was 4. They ended up drafting, I believe they ended up taking Lucas Raymond,
Yes.
if my memory is correct.
Yes, Lucas Raymond.
And I know that Lucas Raymond is a great player, but the fact that you went from 1 to 4, when also you had guys like, Byfield and Tim Stützle at 2 and 3, it's kind of a frustrating thing. It's not even a consolation. It's just you got screwed as badly as one could get screwed. And that was the sad part about that. So that was the difficulty. And also, again, 17 wins, 49 losses, and 5 overtime shootout losses. It was a really, really bad year. One of the worst years we've seen from the Detroit Red Wings since probably the late 80s, early 90s, just before their streak of consecutive years making the playoffs actually began.
Yep.
But you knew that eventually that run was going to end, and you knew at some point the Red Wings were going to have to do this, and now they got to do it. And hopefully with some of the acquisitions that they made, hopefully some of the moves that Steve Yzerman is planning on making throughout the next couple of years, and what he was able to build in Tampa, hopefully could also go well for an original 6 franchise like the Detroit Red Wings. But with a season as bad as it was, and then you add on the bad luck with the draft lottery, they're definitely one of the top 3 worst teams in sports, not just because of their performance, but by the sheer bad luck that they got.
Oh, 100%. And don't get me wrong. I trust Steve Yzerman. I trust what he's doing over there.
He has a track record. He already has a track
record. Absolutely. But this year alone, forget it. It was absolutely forgettable for the Red Wings. They're number 3 on this list of the top 5 worst teams in 2020. Quick recap: number 5, the Warriors; number 4, the Pittsburgh Pirates; number 3, the Detroit Red Wings. Number 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I get it. The NFL season's still going on, but for them, it ends this week. They're currently 1-14 at the time of this recording. It's very likely they're going to go 1-15. But here's why they're number 2. How the hell do you go from beating the Indianapolis Colts in your first game of the season and then losing the next 14 games where you've had a myriad of issues at quarterback? You have no offensive line. You have no defense. Doug Marrone is not that good of a head coach. I'm sorry. He's just not. He needs to be fired at the end of the year. And there's another team where ownership just does not care. Now, I get it. They're going to end up getting the number 1 overall pick. They're probably going to get Trevor Lawrence, which is pretty obvious at this point. I'm sorry, Jet fans, but anyway. But look, the Jaguars, to go 1-0 to start the year, beating probably a very, very sneaky good Colts team who's 10-5 right now at the time of this recording and might have a chance to go to the playoffs, to beat them and then lose the next 14 games in a row. The Jaguars are number 2 on this list. Nothing more needs to be said from me.
You know, when you look at the Jaguars a couple of years ago, actually 2-3 years ago, I mean, led by Blake Bortles, obviously, you know, that's not great. Leonard Fournette, you had arguably one of the best defenses with guys like Calais Campbell, you know, Ramsey, A.J. Bouye, you know, guys like Miles Jack. You know, they were a half away from going to the Super Bowl. And, of course, they got screwed over, which doesn't surprise me because when you play the Patriots and Tom Brady, you're going to get screwed over. Especially when you're facing more than one team when you play them. Anyway, you know, everyone thought that the Jaguars, you know, that was just the beginning of them getting opportunities. But the very next year, things just fell out. Everything just went wrong. And that's the unfortunate situation when you're a small market team that isn't used to that stuff, is that, you know, you don't have players that know how to react to being like that. And I think that's one of the problems that the Jaguars had. And ever since that point, they've gotten rid of pretty much everybody that they can think of that's worth anything. They've gotten a boatload of picks. At least they've gotten some good value for some of these guys.
Oh, right.
They tried to get they brought in Nick Foles last year, and he broke his clavicle first game of the year and was never good again. And somehow they were able to get him off the books and, you know, and give him to Chicago. And then you have Gardner Minshew with the Minshew mania for a little while, and everybody was enjoying that. But Minshew gets hurt. He's really, honestly and truly not that good.
No.
And the reality is that the Jaguars were going to have a bad season no matter what was going to happen. For them to then win their first game, and now you've lost your last 15 games or 14 games now, is pretty remarkable. Something I've actually never seen before. And, you know, look, we've seen teams in the past go 0-16, and
right.
That's hard. That's impressive enough. But for you to, like, win your first game, you give these fans some, like, optimism, and then you end up losing the next 14 and probably going to be 15 after this week,
right.
is pretty impressive. And then you add on to that with the fact that most likely you have locked up the number 1 overall pick. And you know, it was definitely uncertain for the majority of the season, considering there's another team who happens to be on this list that screwed themselves when it comes to this situation. But you look at, you know, the owner, Shahid Khan. The reality is this: Jacksonville's going to be moving within the next 3 years, probably. I think they're moving to London. I think it's pretty much set up that way. You hear the rumblings, you hear Shahid Khan talk, you know, going over to the UK and seeing it, and how many times have we seen the Jaguars play in a London game overseas? I mean, they've done it a bunch of times. And I think that there's a possibility that they actually would move there. I wouldn't be shocked. I really, really wouldn't. And then you look at the fact that the Jaguars fired their general manager, what was his name, David Caldwell.
Yeah.
So they're clearly going to be looking for a new general manager. Doug Marrone is not long for this world. He is definitely going to be fired after the season. But now that you have an opportunity with the boatload of picks that you have, a chance to get a legit general manager, a chance to get a legit head coach, and also your franchise quarterback in most likely Trevor Lawrence, you become a very attractive place to go. And also you're playing in South Florida. Now, maybe not for very long, but you're playing in South Florida. So the Jaguars, they're, you know, the beginning of them, you know, hopefully being a good team down the road could begin this offseason. But if the ownership, you know, Shahid Khan, if he still doesn't really care that much about winning, it's not going to matter what they do. They're still going to be bad. But there's some optimism. There's some hope if you're a diehard Jaguars fan. And trust me, if you're a diehard Jaguars fan, good on you. I give you a lot of credit. But yeah, for them to be 1-14 and now have lost 14 in a row is pretty bad. Not as bad as the last team on this list, but pretty bad enough nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. But the Jaguars, rightfully so, are number 2 on this list. Quick recap here: top 5 worst teams of 2020. Number 5, the Golden State Warriors. Number 4, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Number 3, the Detroit Red Wings. Number 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And oh, by the way, no honorable mentions on this list or the best teams list. I want to get that clarified right now. No honorable mentions on either of these lists. So we're getting straight into it. So number one, I think, is very, very obvious. They absolutely deserve it. They've been probably the worst team in football all year, and that would happen to be the New York freaking Jets. It's very obvious why they're number one. Neil and I have discussed them way too many times. Yes, we joke about it, but in all honest to God seriousness, the Jets are a terrible, terrible team from the top. The Johnsons are awful owners. Adam Gase is an awful head coach. And by the way, Craig Carton apparently broke the news that Chris Johnson spoke internally with him and that he will no longer be the head coach of the Jets. And if that is true, and that's a big if that is true, thank the Lord in heaven above. All right? So let's hope that's actually true. Because if that's the case, then you could find a head coach who can actually work with Sam Darnold and the rest of the team. But I digress there. I've already had my arguments about that. I'm not getting to that here. But bottom line, the Jets are trash. They have nobody. Their quarterback's regressing, even though it's not all of his fault. But even still, they're just a terrible, terrible team. They have been ever since they won their Super Bowl in 1969, which is their only Super Bowl, I might add. But nothing more needs to be said. The Jets are terrible, and they, rightfully so, deserve to be the number one worst team of 2020.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really much else to say. I'm not going to go into a rant or anything. I mean, it's pretty obvious. We both, Jimmy and I both knew when we were making this list. We already knew who was number one. I mean, we knew that. We knew who was going to be number one on this list 3 months ago.
Yes.
I mean, that's how obvious it was. And you look at the situation with the Jets. They've won their last 2 games. They have a chance to finish the season 3-13. And that's, from if you want to be an optimist, yeah, that's great. And we did hear from Craig Carton, which to me is not a reliable source, but it is what it is. He broke the news, in the middle of the Craig and Evans show on WFAN, saying that Adam Gase was going to be fired at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Well, I will see it when I believe it.
Right. That's why I said a big if, because we don't know if that's true or not.
I don't believe it at all. If Adam Gase apparently will be coaching this game. I don't know if he already knows his fate. He could do a lot of damage if he wanted to. I don't think he will, but he very well could. Sam Darnold, we don't know what his situation is. We don't know what the reality is going to be. We don't know if the Jets are going to keep him after this season. We just don't know. I'm happy that he's been playing well the last 2 weeks, and maybe that will give some more teams interest in maybe getting him this offseason if the Jets do decide to move on from him. But the fact that the Jets pretty much had the number one pick wrapped up and everyone's talking about Trevor Lawrence this, Trevor Lawrence that, to now have lost the last 2 games, to have won the last 2 games,
No, you're good. You're good.
Is so Jet-like, it's not even funny at this point.
Only the
you're
Jets.
Laughing, I'm not, because it's so Jet-like that it just shouldn't surprise anybody whatsoever.
That's true.
So at the end of the day, I would say Jets, pain, 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 because that's all most Jets fans, particularly our age, have known their entire lives. And that's just it. That's just it. The Jets deserve to be on here, even though they have a better record than the Jaguars. The fact that the Jets have had this many things, and look, we've discussed them so many times. You guys can go back to the previous episodes. I'm not going to go down the list from just this season.
Right.
The amount of things that have happened with the Jets. I'm happy for the players. I'm sad for the fans. And the ownership, the Johnsons.
Yeah. I think that pretty much sums up everything you need to know. And if you want to know more, go buy his book, Jets, Pain, Pain, Pain. It's on Amazon and wherever hard copies are sold for the price of $19.69. Same with his other book about the Mets, Meet the Mets Mess. But yeah, there's his book. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see Jets, Pain, Pain, Pain. And there's his other book if you're watching on YouTube, Meet the Mets Mess. So both books are now available. 1969. If you're looking for a late holiday gift, if you're looking for a New Year's gift, those are the two
Or
books.
if you just want to, or if you just want to have some pain in your life, you can just buy that too. I don't care.
That's
But
true.
if you want to give me some money for it, I would greatly appreciate it as well.
And there you go. But no, in all seriousness, go buy those books. It really is fascinating stuff. But bottom line, the Jets are number 1. So a final recap here for the top 5 worst teams in 2020. Number 5 is the Golden State Warriors. Number 4, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Number 3, the Detroit Red Wings. Number 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And number 1, the New York freaking Jets. And on that note, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Bottom Line Podcast. If you agree or disagree with anything we just said, or if you want to leave us your own list, let us know on Twitter and Instagram at BottomLineWM6 and on Twitter at the MVP Show, hashtag Bottom Line. Leave a voice message on the Anchor app or Anchor.fm. And as always, if you like what you see on YouTube, please leave a like and a comment down below. It helps out tremendously. And please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss a single episode. And please subscribe on all audio listening platforms. Just include Jimmy when searching for the Bottom Line Podcast. Coming up in the next episode, we're ending 2020 on a high note, as we will now count down the top 5 best teams of 2020. We're ending the year on a positive note because this year has just been so god awful that we all need a bit more positivity in our lives. So top 5 best teams will be coming up next. For Neil Villapiano, I'm Jimmy Finizzi. This is the Bottom Line Podcast. See you in the next episode. Peace out.